This is Smart Talk, inspiring conversations with exceptional people, with your host, Lisa B. Marshall.
There we go. So when I was in my 20s, I met a person who just beamed with happiness. And in fact, he was somebody that put other people's needs first. And he was a guy that had the perfect excuse not to be like that. He was a hemophiliac. He was infected with HIV from the product. And eventually in 1995, he died from AIDS. And he's a guy who, before he died, I spent time with him in the hospital. And this one time, just before his death, he was really sick. And a friend came to visit, and the friend was just distraught. And John couldn't speak at the time. And John took all the energy he could, and he wrote a note to help that other person get through the grief. I couldn't believe that. And I thought to myself, that is a person who is happy from the inside, happy for no reason. And so when I saw your book, I thought, wow, happy for no reason. I have to read this book. I have to know what she has to say about this. And of course, over the years, I read a lot about happiness. I read a lot of the things that you talked about in that book. But what I liked about your book was that you had in that stories. And I love stories. And everyone loves stories, I think. Stories from these happy 100, these people who have unconditional love. And they're able to share their stories in the book, or you shared their stories in the book. And I thought that that was great. And I also liked that you had the exercises at the end, because I think that for a lot of people, you hear this information and it's very general, but then you have these concrete action steps that you really can see progress when you take those steps. So I really appreciated that. So my guest today, by the way, I should have mentioned, is Marci Shimoff. And I'm sure you already know Marci. She is a #1 New York Times bestselling author. She wrote Happy for No Reason. She wrote the other one, Love for No Reason. She also, of course, everyone knows, she's the co-author of the very, very well-known series called The Chicken Soup for the Women's Soul. Sure, she sold over 15 million books. Can you imagine that? Over 15 million books? Anyway, she's certainly exceptional in that matter. But I think what's important to talk about today with her is, from a business perspective, why do we even care about happiness? And for me, happiness comes at a foundation. It's how we need to develop all of our other skills on top of. It's these happiness habits that we have for our mind and our body and our soul that helps us grow. And if we want our business to grow, then we need ourself to grow. And if we want to lead others, then we need to be able to lead ourselves first. And that's why I invited Marci today. So Marci, are you ready for some inspiring smart talk?
I am, and I so loved your opening story. Thank you for sharing that. And I would, may I comment right away on something that you just said? Because,
sure.
I come from a business background. I have an MBA. I've always been very practical. And so all this talk about happiness, I just want people to know this is not some airy-fairy thing. This is grounded in science. And there is a reason that it matters in business. And that is because we, through research, have found that happiness, we think in our society that success is going to be the key to happiness, that as soon as we're successful, then we'll be happy. But what we found is that the opposite is true, that happiness is the key to success. We all know people who have a lot of success, and they are not happy campers.
Yeah, even just little things, right? There's research to show if you smile, right? The smile is what leads to the happiness. It's not the happiness that leads to the smile. And that's counterintuitive, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, the reality is that science has cracked the happiness code. We know what it takes for people to be happier. As far as I'm concerned, this should be headline news. It's wanted since time immemorial is to be happier. We know how to get it. Hello, let's do it,
Right, let's spend more time on that.
And there are some, we've also found that happier people are more creative. They are more successful. On average, happier people make $1 million more over the course of their lifetime. So being happy does have its fringe benefits, but actually happiness unto itself is really the reward. So it's all of it. It's we want to be happier because of the inherent value of happiness. But we also want to be happier because it does affect our external life. It does make us more successful, have better relationships. On average, we live 9 years longer. We are 1/3 less likely to get sick. So that's, it's an important thing, and it's not something. And nowadays, we're finding that in businesses, there are a lot of companies that are saying, hey, we want happier employees because we know happier employees lead to happier customers, and it's a good thing.
Absolutely. So in your book, I mentioned the stories, the Happy 100, and you shared a lot of stories in the book, but that book's been out for a while. Can you tell me now, looking back, your favorite story from those 100 people? What's the one that stands out in your mind?
Gosh,
There was
there
a
are
minister,
so
an actress, a
many.
political refugee, business people.
Yeah, I have great stories from so many people. I'm going to share a story that we're talking mostly to women today. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, women and men, both women and men listen, but.
Oh, okay. well, okay. I'm going to share a story that I think is relevant to everybody. And by the way, 1 out of 4 women in North America is on antidepressants. It's staggering. 1 out of 4 women on antidepressants. And it doesn't have to be this way. We know how to shift this. So I'm going to share with you a story from a woman named Sally Salz. And it's pretty dramatic. Sally was just about to turn 50. She had lived her life kind of the way she thought she was supposed to. She was, did what others thought she should do, all of that. And the week before her 50th birthday, she got violently ill, and she was rushed to the emergency room of her hospital, where the doctors examined her and told her that her liver was failing, and that it was so severe that if she didn't have a liver transplant in the next few days, she would probably die. Now, this completely took Sally by shock. She had no family history of liver disease. She didn't drink. She had no idea why this came about. But she was very fortunate for a transplant, and they were able to do the surgery, and she recovered beautifully. And all was well for about a year, until a year later she went back to the doctor for her routine exam, and the doctor told her that her second liver was failing, and that she would probably need another transplant within a few months or she would die. And again, Sally was dumbfounded, no idea why this happened. But on that particular office visit, she happened to be sitting next to a woman who had just had her third liver transplant in 3 years. And Sally noticed that the woman was the most angry, negative, critical person that she'd ever met. And it reminded Sally that in Chinese medicine, every organ is associated with an emotion, and the liver is associated with anger. So Sally thought, okay, where am I angry? And she realized that she very often wasn't angry outwardly, but she had a lot of anger towards herself. She had grown up in a very critical and judgmental family, and she was always beating herself up. She was never good enough. And so she decided in that moment that she was going to commit herself to practicing some self-love every day for 5 or 10 minutes. That's what she did. 2 months later, she went back to the doctor for the exam to get ready for the second transplant surgery. And the doctor sat her down and said, Sally, I have never seen this before. I can't explain it. I have no idea what's happened, but your liver is completely healed. This is a medical miracle, and you don't need that liver transplant. Well, that was 19 years ago. Sally has never needed that liver transplant. She is truly one of the most happy, healthy, alive, vibrant people that I have ever known. And it's because she made a decision to switch some old habits. And in this case, old habits about the way she treated and talked to herself. And that has made the difference literally of life and death for her.
Well, that certainly explains the power of happiness. Absolutely, the power of happiness. And even in my own case, my late husband, I'm convinced that he lived longer than he should have purely because of that happiness. I know it. I know it in my soul.
It's such a critical piece. And so one of the components of it, and I just want to sort of give you something practical to take away from that story. So one of the components then of happiness is self-love. And it's something that is harder for women than for men. Now, I'm not to say that men have this mastered, but I do know that in general, women have a harder time. And so one of the steps that I'm going to suggest that you take is to write down this question. I'm going to have you write it on a little Post-it or an index card. And the question is, what's the most loving thing I could do for myself right now? What's the most loving thing I could do for myself right now? And I'm going to have you put that up on your computer or, on your mirror at home or in your car. And
on your cell phone.
On your cell phone. Great place. Great. Twice a day, stop and ask yourself that question. What's the most loving thing I can do for myself right now? And then stop and do it. Because one of the ways that we can build greater self-love is by paying attention to what our needs are. So it may be one of the things that I can do right now is stop and get a sip of water, which in fact is something I'm going to do. It may mean that the most loving thing I can do right now is call a friend and get some support. It may mean that it's to go outside and get some fresh air. It may mean that I just stop talking to myself right now so negatively. So all the time your answer is going to be different, but the key is to pay attention and to do it.
So let's take a step back a minute, Marci. What exactly, when you say happy for no reason, why don't we describe that? Correct. I read the book, so we already know. I forgot to let the audience in on that. Let the rest of us in.
So what I mean by happy for no reason is that you have an inner state of peace and well-being that doesn't depend on your circumstances. It doesn't mean that you're walking around 24/7 with a silly grin on your face and you're in some Pollyanna state of denial. We're human. We're going to have bad, hard things happen to us. People die, things happen. So we're going to feel sadness or grief or anger or frustration. But when we have this internal state of being happy for no reason, it means that we have a backdrop of peace and well-being that we carry with us wherever we go. So instead of looking to our life circumstances to extract our happiness, instead we're bringing our happiness to our life circumstances.
So the subtitle of the book, you say 7 steps to be happy from the inside out. Can you just really briefly go through those 7 steps, what they are? That little analogy that you've got is great. So you could just go through that.
Sure. I've learned after many years that we can't remember 7 of anything, but we can remember a metaphor or an analogy. So my 7, I call it building your inner home for happiness. And so a home always has a foundation, 4 corner pillars, a roof, and a garden. And here's how that relates to the 7 steps to inner happiness. The foundation is taking responsibility for your happiness. Recognizing that it's not going to be something outside of you that changes that suddenly is going to make you happier. The I'll be happy when syndrome. I'll be happier when I have a better job or make more money or lose 20 pounds. What science has found is that is not true. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So the foundation is taking responsibility for our happiness. The 4 corner pillars are the pillars of the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul. The roof is living an inspired life, living a life of passion, of purpose. And the garden is who you surround yourself with. Whether you're surrounded with roses and gardenias, positive, uplifting people, or weeds, the toxic people in our lives. So if you notice, when you look at those 7 areas, chances are good you've got 2 of them that you're doing really good, and you've got the other 4 that are just okay. And what I tell people is to start in the area where you're the weakest, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. That's where you're going to get your biggest change quickly.
Okay, so what role does gratitude play when you create happiness or when you're trying to create success?
Happiness is huge. Gratitude is huge. There is an old saying that what we put our attention on grows stronger in our life. And when you're focusing on what's working, you get more of it. Now, we human beings have what's called a negativity bias. What that means is that we tend to remember and pay attention to the negatives more than the positives. So if you tend to do that, first of all, right now, don't beat yourself up for doing that. It's normal. We inherited that trait from our cavemen ancestors. A colleague of mine, Rick Hansen, who's a neuropsychologist, calls it the Velcro and Teflon syndrome. And here's what he means by that. Our minds are like Velcro for the negative. The negatives just stick. They're like Teflon for the positives. The positives slide right off. Researchers found that we have 60,000 thoughts a day, and for the average person, 80% of those are negative. Here's a simple example. You get 10 compliments in a day and 1 criticism. what do you remember at the end of the day?
Of course, you're focusing on that negative.
Focusing on that negative. So what we found is that happier people have reversed that syndrome. They have learned to focus on the positives through gratitude, through appreciation. And the negatives they've learned to Teflon, to slide right off. And so what's been found is that if you just focus for about a minute at the end of every day on the 5 things that you were grateful for during the day, within a month you will have raised your happiness set point. See, it's all based in our brain physiology. We have neural pathways in the brain, and our brain tends to go down the same neural pathways unless we do something to create new neural pathways. And what we're looking to do right now is to create neural pathways of the positive. And it takes 20 seconds for us to ingrain a positive neural pathway, nowhere near as long for the negatives. So what it's important to do is not just focus on what's positive, but to actually think about it for at least 20 seconds so that you ingest it in a very deep way.
One of the things that I do is I have a sort of my daily happiness routine. And
Ooh,
when
I want to hear about that.
Well, there's a lot of pieces to it, but one of the things when I was reading your book, I added in the Brother David Steindl-Rast. I thought that was a great suggestion. Can you share that?
Absolutely. Oh, I just love this. This Brother David Steindl-Rast is a Benedictine monk who is in his, he might be 86 or 87 now, and just truly one of the happiest people I have ever met in my entire life. And he was in Austria, I believe it was, during World War II, growing up in Austria, and it was not easy. He says he remembers that they were kind of on the run, and sometimes the only food they had during the day was grass, and his mother would make grass soup and would teach them all to be grateful for whatever they had. So he grew up with this feeling of gratitude, and he does a practice every day where he picks a theme for the day, and every time that theme comes up, he takes it as a sign to stop and feel grateful. So, for example, one day his theme may be water. So every time he sees water, every time he turns on the water faucet, or every time he drives by a fire hydrant and sees water, thinks of water, it's his sign to stop and be grateful for whatever in that moment. It's not that he's grateful for the water necessarily. It's just it's like an alarm going off.
Right.
And so, one day it might be trees. Another day it might be, light. And every day I've asked him how he's been doing it for 10 years. And I said, have you ever repeated your theme? He said, I don't think so. So part of the game is to try to find the theme for the new theme of the day that's going to be your trigger or your alarm for stopping and feeling gratitude. So you've done that, huh?
Yeah, it's funny that you just said that because light was my one for today.
No.
I swear, light was
Oh my God, I love that.
And then when we started our interview, you had that light on your face. Do you remember?
Yes. I love that synchronicity. That's so cool.
So you've gone through hundreds of exercises with people, coaching them. And I wonder, are there areas that people typically get stuck, or pillars that get stuck with, they struggle with?
Absolutely. And I have to say, I'm often asked, what's the most important, what's the fast track to greater happiness? And there's 2 answers to this. One is that we each have our Achilles heel. I mentioned those 7 areas, and for each of us, we have where we might want to start first because it's our Achilles heel. But if there was one universal answer to how we could fast track our happiness, it would be this: forgiveness. We tend to hang on to old grudges, resentments, anger, whether towards others or towards ourselves. That story that I told earlier is a beautiful story for self-love. So what I found is if you are stuck in any area of your life, whether it's in your career, financially, in a relationship, or in your health, the first practice I'm going to suggest that you do is a forgiveness practice. And I'm going to teach it to you right now. And you do forgiveness not for the sake of the other person. You do it for your own sake. It's to remove the blocks within you who've already passed on. It could be for a situation that happened 30 years ago. It could be current. It doesn't matter. All you're going to do in this is a practice called Ho'oponopono. The good news is you never have to be able to say that word, pronounce the word, or spell it. It comes from a Kahuna Hawaiian tradition, which is why there's all those O's and P's in it. And it's a simple practice where you just, you want to just do this once a day for about 5 minutes. You think about a person or a situation that you are having a hard time letting go of or forgiving, and it could be yourself. And you just send these 4 wishes. They are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And I'm going to repeat those. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. You think about that person or situation, send those 4 wishes, no matter who is right, doesn't matter, that's not relevant. And watch the miracles that happen in your life, because I promise that they will. You will have miracles happen. And I have seen this over and over again. I've taught this for many, many years, and it's astonishing. May I share one of my own personal miracle stories based on this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Love to hear it.
I'm going to take a sip of water first. Have you ever practiced this one at all, Lisa?
No, I have not. And it's interesting. Even as a child, I never really held on to stuff. And I remember my sister I used to call her the queen of hate, because she could remember for long periods of time that she was still upset with me. And I was the kind of person that the minute something happened, I'd be upset for a couple seconds, and I literally would forget that I was supposed to be mad. And I would even try sometimes to be mad at my sister to try to remember, and I couldn't remember to do it. So
you have to write notes to yourself. Remember, be mad at sister.
I swear. And so for me, that never seemed like an area that I really struggled with a whole lot. But I certainly can understand that there are times that I do need to be forgiving. I suppose it's more for myself.
Okay, so then you think about this in terms of yourself.
Yes.
And congratulations, because that's very fortunate. You're very blessed, because most people do have things happen, it could be their boss, or it could be a decision at work, or it could be whatever it is. We're holding on to these little energy packets of anger and resentment. So this is my most profound story. Happened with my sister. And it happened about 5 years ago. She and I got in an argument, and we weren't talking to each other. And this had never happened in our family before. So it was kind of awful. And about 4 months into this silent treatment between us, our family had to gather because we were moving our mother from the house that she lived in for 58 years, which was the only family home I knew. And we were moving her into an assisted living small little apartment. And the morning of the move, we all gathered at her new apartment to unpack her things. And I was so nervous because it was the first time seeing my sister after all this time. So I came in last, and I hugged and I kissed everybody hello, except my sister. She was off in the kitchen unpacking some dishes, and I just ignored her. Well, we went through the morning ignoring each other, and after about 3 hours of this, I was so stressed out that I decided to go to my car and meditate. And on the way to the car, I remembered Ho'oponopono. So I sat in my car, and I just imagined her in front of me, and I just sent her silently these wishes. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And I did that a little bit towards myself as well, because I was angry at myself, but mostly I was sending them towards her. And Lisa, after about 5 minutes or 6 minutes of doing this, a wave of love came over me, and my heart just broke open. And I realized I felt all this love for my sister, and I realized that she wasn't mad at me for what I had done a few months earlier, although I'm sure that was part of it. But it was a lifetime of stuff that had happened. And I, for the first time ever, totally got where she was coming from. And I had such compassion and love for her. And it just shifted everything for me. So I went back into the apartment, and I didn't say anything. I just went back and continued to unpack my mom's things. 3 minutes later, my sister came over to me out of the blue, grabbed me by the hand and said, come on, let's go unpack Mom's closet together, which is what we did. We had a blast doing it. We're at lunch an hour later. She hands me her baked potato and says, here, Marci, I know you like these more than I do. Have mine. I was so shocked by this that I pulled my brother aside and I said, okay, what did you tell her while I was gone? And he said, Marci, nobody said anything. We have no idea what's just happened. Well, Lisa, that was the beginning of an entirely different relationship that I now have with my sister that I deeply treasure. And I tell you that it happened at the most critical time. Because 9 months later, she and I found ourselves standing in that same closet of our mother's, this time packing up mom's things because mom had just died very unexpectedly and suddenly. And I cannot imagine what that would have been like had my sister and I still had the silent treatment between us. And the reason I tell this story is that I know that every single person listening has someone in their life with whom they need to forgive. And so I say, use your own life as an experiment, try it out for yourself, and see what happens. And I know that this is a business-oriented program that we're on, and yet we're doing some kind of the more touchy-feely stuff. But I promise you that this will affect your business dramatically by forgiving in any area of your life. It's going to free up the energy for more creativity, more success, and greater success.
So you wrote this in 2008 and obviously been doing a lot of work since then. What are some of the important lessons that you've learned about creating deep and lasting happiness since the book has come out that may be not in the book?
What a great question. You know, I've actually, in the more recent years, after I wrote Happy for No Reason, I thought, okay, what do I want more than happiness? Because I write books about what I want to learn about. And I realized the only thing that's more important than happiness is unconditional love. So then I wrote Love for No Reason. And in the last year, I started finding myself waking up every morning going, my life is a miracle. And it wasn't that way. I was really, believe me, I was born with existential angst. I was an unhappy kid. I was unhappy for years and years. I even had a lot of success. I was at the height of my career with Chicken Soup for the Soul, had 3 books on the New York Times bestseller list. Remember, I remember that I had just given a talk to 8,000 women. I had just signed 5,432 books over the course of 3 days. And at the end of what should have been, felt like a rock star. At the end of that, I went back up to my hotel room and I plopped onto the bed and I burst into tears because I realized that I had everything that I thought I needed in life to be happy, and I still wasn't. And that's when I went on this big search for deeper happiness. And so I really came from a place of I would say, low-grade depression throughout most of my life. And what I had been learning through Happy for No Reason really worked for me, so I started spreading it, and it's worked for so many people. And in the years since that has come out, I've found that I now feel like my life is miraculous. And so what I have done, and I realized, there are specific principles for happiness. If you practice certain principles, you will be happier. There are certain principles for success. If you practice those principles, you will be more successful. And I realized in the same way, there are certain principles for creating miracles, for moving into what I call the miracle zone. And so what I started waking up going, oh my God, my life is a miracle. And I know how to get in the miracle zone. So what I've been doing recently is mentoring. I took 8 women under my wing, and I've been mentoring them in how to live a life of miracles. And they actually had such success in so many miracles. I mean, they blew my mind. And one woman doubled her income. One woman lost 30 pounds that she's never been able to lose before. One woman had given up on relationships. She is now in like a relationship that's the happiest she's ever been in, and is able to receive the love that she wasn't able to receive before. So I've decided I'm doing this now phenomenal program where I am doing a group mentoring program for 2014 where people are creating their top 3 miracles for the year. We have 1,500 people in this program. And what everybody's doing is they're picking 3 miracles that they want to create in their life for 2014. And they're walking through this program that I have for creating miracles. Together we're doing it. They're getting the group energy, the group effect. And already in the first few weeks, people are having miracles happen. So that's the most exciting thing for me, is moving into this energy of how do I create miracles in my life? Because I know that we are not on this planet to live miserable, unhappy, lives of total struggle. There is the technology available for us to live lives of success, of happiness, and of miracles. And so that's what I'm excited about.
Yesterday, I read on CNN.com, there was a question that I was actually thinking about the whole time I was reading your book. And the question was, are people with children or without children happier? And I'm wondering, what do you think about that? Did you see any pattern in your Happy 100?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know that a lot more people now are not having children. And my experience is, and I don't have children, my experience is that it's very individual. And the most important thing is that you are living what your soul says, that you're aligned with your own soul's destiny. And if you feel in your heart that that is having children is what is your calling here, then please have children. And if you feel in your heart that not having children is your calling in life, then please don't have children. It's really a matter of being very, very clear on our soul's intention. And what I found, especially in the business world, is that a lot of people go after what I call ego intentions. It's the beginning of the year and everybody probably sets some resolutions or goals or intentions for themselves. But we go about setting those goals or intentions in entirely the wrong way. We set what I call ego intentions. Ego or intentions are, I want this because it feeds my ego, even though we're not doing it consciously. This is a societal thing. An ego intention is, I want to double my income or I want to lose 30 pounds. The reason that you want to lose 30 pounds is so that you will maybe not be judged, or so that you will be more accepted, or maybe so that your old boyfriend will see you, or your old boyfriend's new girlfriend. Those are ego intentions. You take the same outcome and you reframe it, that I am living, I am healthy, vital, and happy in my body, living the radiance on the outside that I feel on the inside. Well, all of a sudden, it's the same outcome where you want to lose 30 pounds, but you've noticed the difference in the feeling between them. One is I want to do it for my ego. The other is I want to do it for my soul. And so the reason I bring that up is when you ask the question about children, it's not about who's happier, children or no children. It's about being very, very clear on what is your soul's calling and what is your soul's intention. And then you will be happier.
I have to tell you that I have twin daughters, and when I told them the title of your book, immediately they both said in stereo, "Ooh, I want that. Can we read it? Or is that just for adults?"
Oh, how cool. How old are your girls?
They're 9.
Well, there is nothing more joyful to me than young people starting these happiness practices early on, because the sooner you start creating habits of happiness, the better off you are. So there are lots of tools and techniques in there. I have 21 happiness habits, and many of them can be practiced by children. So
we're going to be working on it. Don't worry.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it.
Okay, the last question that I ask every one of my guests, because it's very important to me. I think that when we model the mindsets, the actions, and the principles of exceptional people, that what that helps us do is to unleash and amplify the leaders that are already inside of us. And so what I would like to know from you is, what do you think are the most important traits, the 3 most important traits for success and happiness, to move somebody from ordinary to extraordinary?
What a brilliant question. So number 1 is an open heart. I have seen that the happiest and most successful people in life are people who have an open heart, who really have gratitude, forgiveness, love, the things that we've talked about today, unquestionably. The second thing is a connection to a greater energy in the universe. And I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you call it God or divine or earth, Mother Earth, or life or nature, but feeling that you are part of a greater whole. And then I would say number 3, deeply honoring and following your soul's calling.
So that's wonderful, Marci. I really appreciate it. I'd like to wrap up the interview with a quote from Dan Millman. He's another self-help author. I'm sure you know him.
Oh, but I'm going to get to wrap it up too, aren't I?
Oh, yeah.
I have a favorite quote too. Okay, so tell me, Dan, we'll share our favorite quote.
He says, I've always believed that a life of quality, enjoyment, and wisdom were my human birthright and would be automatically bestowed upon me as time passed. I never suspected that I'd have to learn how to live, that there'd be specific disciplines and ways of seeing the world that I had to master before I could awaken to a simple, happy, and uncomplicated life. And I thought that that was a great summary of what we've been talking about today.
I love that. What a great quote. Dan's actually my neighbor, so it's a great quote. I love that.
So if you want to share yours, you may.
I do. And are we going to be able to let people know that they can listen to this fabulous call, that online seminar that I'm offering?
Absolutely. I'm going to get to that in just
okay.
1 second.
Okay, because I'm so excited about that, because I've got a free seminar that you can take that are going to get, but I'll tell you my quote first.
Okay, you tell me the quote, and then we'll talk about that seminar.
Okay, good. People often ask me, is this selfish? Wanting to be happier. You know, we've just been talking about our own self-love and all that. Isn't this selfish? I believe it is what you could possibly do in the world. Because when you shift, when you change, when you're happier, it affects all the people around you. And ultimately, it affects the whole world. And so I leave you with this Chinese proverb that goes like this. It says, when there is light in the soul, there will be beauty in the person. When there is beauty in the person, there will be harmony in the house. When there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. And when there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. And my prayer and my wish for every single one of us is that we feel that light in our souls and that love in our hearts. And through that, we help create peace here on this planet of ours.
Thank you, Marci. If you'd like to learn more about how to create deep and lasting happiness, you can visit Marci's website at happyfornoreason.com. She has this awesome seminar that's coming up. It's called The 3 Secrets to a Life Full of Miracles. And what it allows us to do is to put yourself into the miracle zone. She already talked about some of those miracles that are already happening. If you're interested in this free seminar, you could go to miraclesonlineseminar.com. That's miraclesonlineseminar.com to learn more about that, and to also learn more about Marci and her tremendous gift to us as business professionals and just as humans on the planet. Thank you so much, Marci.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful to be with you. And I wish for everybody that 2014 is your year of miracles, because that is our birthright.
If you'd like to be part of the conversation, visit smarttalksuccess.com. That's smarttalksuccess.com.